In the heart of West Africa, nestled between the Atlantic Ocean and the dense green of the rainforests, lies Côte d'Ivoire, a nation that once symbolized African success. To the world, it was the land of cocoa and coffee, a model of stability, progress, and prosperity. But beneath that glittering image lies a truth far more complex. A truth wrapped in secrecy, manipulation, and quiet control. For decades, a small group of powerful elites, both foreign and domestic, have controlled the destiny of this country. This is the story of how that secret cabal came to own Côte d'Ivoire. The story begins long before independence. Back when French colonial officers mapped out West Africa like a chessboard, each borderline drawn not for people, but for profit. Côte d'Ivoire, with its fertile soil and strategic coastline, became one of France's prized possessions. The French didn't just extract resources. They built a system, an invisible web of influence designed to endure long after the tricolor flag was lowered. The colonial legacy was not just in buildings or roads. It was in banks, contracts, and political loyalties that survived independence. When the Ivorian flag was raised in 1960, the country's first president, Félix Houphouët-Boigny, was celebrated as a father of the nation. But behind his rise stood French business interests and powerful Parisian allies. He promised stability and growth, and for a time, he delivered it. Cocoa exports soared. Abidjan became the Paris of Africa, and Côte d'Ivoire's economy thrived. Yet, it was all built on a delicate illusion, an illusion maintained by a deep relationship between French corporations, Ivorian elites, and the post-colonial networks known as La Francafrique. This network, informal yet immensely powerful, ensured that while Côte d'Ivoire appeared independent, its economy and politics remained tethered to Paris. French oil companies secured exclusive drilling rights. French banks controlled the CFA franc, the currency that bound Ivorian policy to French oversight. French contractors won the infrastructure projects, and the returns flowed outward, to shareholders, to French politicians, to secret accounts hidden in Geneva and Luxembourg. The average Ivorian farmer, meanwhile, worked under crushing terms. Cocoa, the golden crop that powered the economy, was traded on global markets dominated by foreign cartels. While French and Swiss traders grew rich, the people who harvested the beans remained trapped into poverty. Yet the illusion of prosperity persisted. Western media painted Côte d'Ivoire as a miracle, a beacon of capitalism in Africa. Few asked who really benefited from this so-called miracle. Over time, a small group of Ivorian families joined this web, forming a local elite that mirrored the colonial masters they had once opposed. They built empires in construction, trade, and finance, often in partnership with French conglomerates. Politics became their shield, corruption their lubricant. Power passed not through elections, but through alliances, forged in boardrooms and secured in backrooms. By the 1980s, the illusion began to crack. Falling cocoa prices exposed the fragility of the Ivorian model. Debt mounted, the IMF arrived, and austerity followed. But even as the economy faltered, the elite cabal found ways to profit. Privatizations were rigged to benefit insiders. National assets, ports, power plants, mines, quietly shifted into the hands of private consortia tied to foreign investors. France, facing its own economic struggles, tightened its grip. The more Côte d'Ivoire suffered, the more valuable its obedience became. When Houphouët-Boigny died in 1993, the spell broke. The transition of power unleashed the rivalries long hidden beneath the surface. The cabal, once united under his authority, splintered into factions, each seeking to control the levers of wealth and the loyalty of foreign patrons. The streets of Abidjan, once symbols of progress, became battlegrounds for influence. But amidst the chaos, one thing remained constant: the invisible hand of foreign power. Through coups, civil wars, and peace accords, the cabal survived. It adapted, shifting faces but never form. Western corporations changed names. French influence rebranded as partnership. Yet the underlying structure, dependency, extraction, control, remained untouched. The warlords who rose to prominence were often backed by foreign intelligence or financed through secret trade routes. The minerals of the north, the cocoa of the south, and the oil of the coast all flowed through networks controlled by this modern aristocracy. And at the center of it all stood a paradox, a country rich in everything the world desired, but poor in everything its people needed. Every new president promised reform, but each found themselves entangled in the same system they vowed to dismantle. Laurent Gbagbo sought to assert sovereignty. He was overthrown. Alassane Ouattara pledged modernization. He opened the doors to foreign investors even wider. The pattern was unmistakable. Challenge the cabal, and you are removed. Serve it, and you thrive. To understand how this works, one must follow the money. Côte d'Ivoire's exports are vast: cocoa, coffee, oil, gold, timber, but the profits rarely stay in Abidjan. A single ton of cocoa earns a farmer less than $2,000, yet generates more than $10,000 in profit by the time it reaches European shelves. The difference, billions of dollars annually, disappears into the financial labyrinth of multinational corporations. Meanwhile, the Ivorian state borrows from the very institutions controlled by those same nations. It is a perfect loop of dependency designed to keep the system alive, and within that loop lies the essence of the cabal, not a shadowy conspiracy of men in suits, but a network of mutual interests so entrenched that even well-intentioned reformers are forced to play along. Ministers, generals, bankers, diplomats, each benefits from maintaining the illusion of independence. Each knows that true liberation would mean the end of their privileges. So the cycle continues, invisible yet unbreakable. As the world moved into the 21st century, Côte d'Ivoire's role became even more strategic. Global corporations realized that control over cocoa, oil, and critical minerals could no longer rely on brute colonialism. Instead, it required influence, soft power cloaked in trade deals, development aid, and military partnerships. France established permanent bases in West Africa, ensuring rapid response to any instability. The European Union flooded the region with development funds, while private contractors secured lucrative projects. Each transaction deepened the cabal's reach. Even the rise of new global players, China, Turkey, Russia, did not break the cycle. They merely joined it. Beijing financed infrastructure. Moscow offered weapons. Ankara built mosques and factories. Each came with its own agenda, yet all operated within the same framework: resource extraction, political loyalty, and elite collaboration. The faces changed, the flags changed, but the invisible hand remained. Today, Côte d'Ivoire stands as one of Africa's fastest-growing economies. Glass towers rise over Abidjan's skyline, international summits are hosted in glittering hotels, and GDP numbers impress foreign investors. But beneath that veneer lies a troubling truth. The rural farmer still earns less than he did 40 years ago. The cocoa he grows fuels fortunes abroad, while his own children attend underfunded schools and clinics without medicine. The profits flow to offshore accounts. The debts remain national, and when Ivorians protest, demanding justice, the cabal responds, not with bullets, but with silence. Control of media, manipulation of narratives, and the quiet erasure of dissent have become its weapons. The system no longer needs violence to maintain power. It needs only apathy. Keep the people distracted with small victories. A new road here, a foreign investment there, and the machine continues to operate. What makes this structure so enduring is not its brutality, but its sophistication. It thrives not in darkness, but in daylight. It operates through legal contracts, investment treaties, and diplomatic courtesies. It doesn't topple governments, it shapes them. It doesn't steal resources. It buys them cheaply, efficiently, and with the blessing of the state. To expose this cabal is to expose the very architecture of modern neocolonialism. The bankers in Paris who dictate monetary policy for millions of Africans, the hedge funds in London that speculate on cocoa futures, the consultants in Washington who draft reform packages, the local elites who sign the contracts and pocket the commissions. Each plays their part in maintaining a facade of progress while ensuring that true sovereignty remains out of reach. But something is changing. Across Africa and within Côte d'Ivoire itself, a new generation is rising, one that no longer believes in the myth of benevolent partnerships. They see how their resources enrich others. They see how the wealth of their land fuels foreign prosperity while their own communities remain destitute. They see the truth, and they are no longer afraid to speak it. Part 2 will continue from this moment of awakening, tracing how Côte d'Ivoire's youth, soldiers and thinkers are beginning to challenge the old order, and asking whether the secret Cabal's grip can finally be broken, or whether it will adapt once more and survive under a new name. But a quiet storm is forming. Beneath the surface of calm streets and corporate press releases, there is an awakening. It begins not in the corridors of power, but in classrooms and markets, and on the digital screens of young Ivorians who have begun to connect the dots. They look at their land, at their natural wealth, at the fields that feed the world and the oil that lights foreign cities, and they ask, why not us? This generation was not alive during the colonial era, yet they live with its consequences every day. They see the French military bases still standing on Ivorian soil, not as protectors, but as reminders. They watch as multinationals dictate the price of their cocoa, while their parents work endless hours for a fraction of its value. And they realize something their elders rarely said aloud. Independence was not freedom. It was a transaction. Universities have become new battlegrounds for ideas. Students debate economic sovereignty, the CFA Franc, and the legacy of Francafrique. Independent journalists investigate offshore accounts, tracing the hidden flows of money that tie local politicians to global interests. Artists turn frustration into expression through music, poetry, and cinema. They expose the contradictions of a system that calls itself democratic, yet remains deeply colonial in structure. Meanwhile, in the villages far from Abidjan's skyline, farmers are beginning to organize. For decades they were told they were powerless, too scattered, too poor, too dependent on intermediaries. But now collectives are forming. Small cooperatives are bypassing middlemen and exporting cocoa directly. It's a small act, almost invisible in the global scale, but symbolically revolutionary. Every direct sale is a defiance, a refusal to let the cabal define their worth. Still, the struggle is not without consequence. The system defends itself. Activists disappear. Journalists are silenced through subtle intimidation. International agencies, under the guise of stability, issue reports praising the government's reforms while ignoring the human cost. Western embassies, which speak loudly about democracy elsewhere, fall silent when profits are at stake. In this silence, the cabal survives, not through violence, but through control of narratives. But history has shown that no structure, no matter how sophisticated, is invincible. Every empire, every hidden hand, eventually faces the same truth. The people it exploits will one day see through the illusion. That moment is approaching for Côte d'Ivoire. The younger generation no longer fears words like nationalization or sovereignty. They are reading, learning, and connecting with others across Africa who face the same pattern of control. From Bamako to Ouagadougou, from Conakry to Niamey, the same awakening echoes. Africa will no longer be managed. The cabal senses this. Its members, once confident, now speak in guarded tones. They know that the monopoly of influence is weakening. For the first time, foreign control is being challenged not by guns, but by ideas. And ideas are harder to kill. Social media amplifies voices that were once silenced. Documentaries, exposés, and online forums dissect the intricate ties between African elites and foreign corporations. Names once untouchable are now subjects of public scrutiny. The spell of invisibility is breaking. Still, the cabal is adaptive. It doesn't rely solely on France anymore. It diversifies. American development funds, Chinese infrastructure loans, and Gulf investments are brought into the fold. Each new partner claims to liberate Africa from Western dominance, but often they simply replace one chain with another. The form changes. The dependency remains. The war for Côte d'Ivoire's wealth is no longer fought with armies. It's fought with contracts, data, and debt. In this complex web, even well-meaning leaders find themselves cornered. They face a painful dilemma: defy the system and risk collapse, or cooperate and survive politically. The institutions designed to guide the nation, central banks, ministries, courts, are bound by foreign consultants, international lenders, and trade obligations written in languages few Ivorians even understand. To undo it would require not only courage but collective awakening, and yet something remarkable is happening. Across Africa, governments once reliant on foreign approval are beginning to question the terms of their dependence. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have already begun to cut the strings of La Francafrique. Their defiance is contagious. In Abidjan, whispers grow louder. Could Côte d'Ivoire, the jewel of French West Africa, ever dare to follow that path? Could the land that symbolized the success of colonial partnership become the land that buries it? For many Ivorians, this question has become personal. Every corrupt deal, every stolen resource, every manipulated election is now seen through a new lens, not as isolated failures, but as parts of the same machine. The Cabal's greatest weapon has always been fragmentation, keeping people divided by ethnicity, religion, or ideology. But when they begin to see that their true enemy is not one another, but the system that profits from their division, unity becomes possible. The nation's youth, over 60% of the population, are its greatest hope and its greatest risk to the Cabal's survival. They have nothing to lose but inherited poverty. They have access to global information networks. They understand the language of modern resistance, and they have grown up witnessing how easily their leaders bow to external pressure. Many are leaving for Europe, but many more are staying, determined to reclaim what was stolen long before they were born. Côte d'Ivoire's future then may hinge not on a revolution of weapons, but on a revolution of perception. The day Ivorians collectively recognize that their nation's destiny is still written elsewhere is the day the Cabal's spell will break. Because its power is not sustained by armies, it's sustained by belief. The belief that nothing can change. The belief that dependency is inevitable. The belief that the system is too big to fail. Once that belief collapses, everything built upon it begins to crumble. The West senses this shift. That is why new efforts are underway to rebrand control as partnership aid. Agencies speak of inclusive development. Think tanks promote shared prosperity, and international forums invite African leaders to negotiate under rules they did not write. It's a sophisticated dance, one where the music of reform conceals the choreography of domination. But even the best performances end when the audience stops clapping. As the 2020s progress, Côte d'Ivoire finds itself at a crossroads. Its economy continues to grow on paper, but inequality widens. Its cities glitter, but its villages decay. Its leaders speak of independence, but its central bank answers to Paris. The Cabal's influence remains deep, but for the first time, it feels the ground beneath it shifting. Because the questions that Ivorians are now asking are no longer about cocoa prices or foreign investment. They are about power, history, and ownership. Who owns the soil? Who owns the money that flows through its banks? Who decides what the nation exports and at what price? Who writes the laws that govern its trade? These are dangerous questions, not because they threaten stability, but because they threaten truth. Once answered, they reveal that the so-called free market was never free. It was carefully designed to protect those already in power, yet hope persists. There are leaders, economists, activists, educators, who are crafting a different vision. They speak of regional integration, of Pan-African trade, of ending the CFA franc, of building industries that keep value within African borders. Their ideas are met with skepticism, even ridicule, by the old guard. But history has always favored the dreamers who dared to imagine a different world. Still, dismantling a cabal built over a century cannot happen overnight. It will require a collective will, not just from governments, but from the people. From the farmer who refuses to sell his cocoa to middlemen. From the teacher who teaches her students to question authority. From the journalist who writes the story that others fear to publish. from the youth who chooses to stay and fight rather than flee, and perhaps one day Côte d'Ivoire will look back on this era not as a tragedy, but as a turning point, the moment it realized that wealth without sovereignty is poverty, and that independence without control is illusion. The Cabal, of course, will not go quietly. It will reinvent itself. It will find new languages, digital platforms, foreign investments, soft loans to maintain its grip. It will continue to whisper that resistance is futile, that Africa needs guidance, that the old order is stability. But deep down, even the Cabal knows the truth. Its time is ending, because no empire, no matter how clever, can own a people forever. The human spirit, once awakened, does not return to sleep. And across Africa, from the savannas of Mali to the forests of Côte d'Ivoire, that spirit is rising. It speaks in new voices, dreams new dreams, and refuses to accept a world where its destiny is dictated by others. In the end, the story of Côte d'Ivoire is not just about one country's struggle against hidden masters. It is a mirror held up to the entire continent, a reflection of what happens when power is outsourced and freedom is sold for promises of prosperity. The world will continue to call Côte d'Ivoire a success story, but the true measure of success will not be found in GDP figures. It will be found in whether Ivorians, ordinary men and women, finally become owners of their own wealth, their own politics, and their own future. Perhaps that is what the Cabal fears most, not exposure, not rebellion, but awakening. Because once a people see the strings that control them, they begin to cut them, one by one. And no amount of money or military power can stop an idea whose time has come. So the question remains, who truly owns Côte d'Ivoire? The answer, whispered by the wind that moves through its cocoa fields and the ocean waves that crash against its shores, is changing. Not Paris, not the corporations, not the politicians in glass towers, but the people. For the first time in generations, they are beginning to understand that the wealth beneath their feet, the power of their unity, and the dignity of their struggle are stronger than any cabal. And when that realization becomes collective, when it moves from whisper to roar, the hidden hands will tremble, and the true owners of Côte d'Ivoire will finally stand tall in the light of their own freedom.